You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. Chapter 29. Sher-En 3 times enters a death cell. Wusong creates a disturbance at Feiyin Pool. The first thing, said Wusong, is that you immediately restore all the household goods and furniture to Sher-En, the golden-eyed tiger cub. Jiang immediately agreed to do this. Secondly, that as soon as I allow you to get up you will summon all the brave heroes of this Kuaihua forest to come and give obeisance to Sher-En. Jiang also agreed to do this. Thirdly, that as soon as you have done these 2 things you will leave this district and not return to it again. If I see you here again I will again beat you. And if you come 10 times, I will beat you 10 times. If I treat you lightly you will be nearly dead, but if I beat you thoroughly you will certainly be killed. Do you also agree to this condition? Jiang wanted to preserve his life, so as soon as he heard this he also agreed. Wusong picked him up and saw that his face was bruised and that his lips were swollen already. His head was rested to one side and blood was flowing from a wound in his temple. Wusong pointed his finger at Jiang the door god and abused him. What a small thing you are. When I killed the tiger I only gave 3 blows of my fist and a couple of kicks. Be quick and hand over those plunderings. If you are a little slow I shall beat you again. Jiang the door god now knew that his opponent was Wusong, and he signified his submission. While they were talking thus Sher-En arrived with about 20 armed men to settle the issue by force if necessary. They were exceedingly delighted to see that Wusong had been victorious, and they all gathered round him. Wusong, pointing his finger at Jiang the door god, said, "The original proprietor of the shop has now arrived, so now send for the men to make obeisance to him." Jiang asked them all to go and sit down in the inn. Wusong took them all to the inn, where they found the floor was all flooded with wine. The men and the girl had managed to get out of the jars, but their faces were badly besmeared, and their clothes were dripping with wine. All the other waiters had run away. Wusong and his followers entered the inn and sat down. He told Jiang to get his things packed, ready, and put the baggage on a cart, and send them, and the girl off in advance. The waiters were sent off to bring the heroes of the village to the inn to pay respects to Sher-En. When they arrived they were all asked to take their seats at the tables on which was a bountiful supply of the best wine. Wusong told Sher-En to take the seat of honor, and Jiang the door god to sit by his side. Each man had a large cup, and after they had all drunk several cups of warm wine Wusong spoke, "Honorable neighbors, I, Wusong, committed murder at Yanggu County, and was banished to this place. Upon arrival here I heard people say that this inn in the Kuaihua forest formerly belonged to Sher-En, and that it was taken from him by force, and without payment, by Jiang the door god. But you must not suppose that Sher-En is my master, or that I have anything to do with him. I have always tried to punish those who are unfair to their fellow men. In my travels I would draw out my sword whenever I see any injustice. I have never been afraid of death. Today I would have given Jiang the door god a very severe thrashing, and rid this village of an evil, but out of due regard to you honorable neighbors I spare his life, on the condition that he must go to some other district this very evening. If however I ever see him return to this place I will deal with him in the same way that I treated the tiger on Jingyang Ridge." Upon hearing this all the neighbors knew that he was Wusong, and they now stood up and spoke in favor of Jiang the door god. "Good sir, please appease your anger. We will see that he goes and restores the property to Sher-En." Jiang dared not say a word, but duly handed over the property to Sher-En. He saluted the neighbors, put his baggage on a cart, and departed. Wusong drank wine with the neighbors until they were all drunk. They left in the evening when Wusong went to sleep, and did not get up until the following morning about 9 a.m. When Sher, the old warden, heard that his son had again got control of the Kuaihua forest, he rode a horse, and upon reaching the inn he thanked Wusong for what he had done. During the following days they had bountiful feasts for celebration. In the Kuaihua forest there was not a single man who did not hear of Wusong and come to congratulate him. The inn was renovated and reopened. Sher, the old warden, returned home, but Wu Song stayed at the inn where the business was more prosperous than before. All the gambling dens and exchange shops sent greater sums to Shi-en, so that he was now making double profits. Shi-en paid great respects to Wu Song, and looked upon him as a parent. After more than a month the weather got cooler, and pleasant breezes introduced the beginning of autumn. We might write a lot about this pleasant period, but we must desist. One day Shi-en was discussing with Wu Song the art of fencing and hand combat, when they saw 3 soldiers leading a horse stop in front of the inn, and ask for the proprietor, and then also asked whether that tiger slayer, Wu Song, was also there. Shi-en recognized the soldiers as the adjutants of Colonel Zhang Mengfang at Mengzhou. So he went outside and asked what they wanted Wu Song for. "Our commander has ordered us to come here to invite Wu Song," said a soldier. "Here is our written order." Shi-en read the order and thought, "This Colonel Zhang is my father's superior, and my father is at his disposal. As Wu Song is a banished convict, and also under his control so that he will have to go." So Shi-en went inside and told Wu Song that these soldiers had an order from Colonel Zhang to take him to see that officer, that they had brought a horse for him to ride. And he asked what did he think about it. Wu Song was a straightforward man, and at once replied, "As the colonel wants me, I must go and see what he has to say." So Wu Song went at once to change his dress, and taking a servant with him, mounted the horse, and set off for Mengzhou. Upon arrival at Colonel Zhang's house he dismounted, and followed a soldier inside. When Zhang saw Wu Song he was much pleased, and told him to come forward. Wu Song saluted, and clasping both hands stood with attention at one side. Zhang spoke, "I have heard that you are a great man, without equal in bravery, and are firm and constant with your companions whether in life or death. For some time I have been looking out for such a man as you, but do not know whether you would care to act as my confidential personal guard." Wu Song knelt down and said, "I am a criminal. If I am to be favored by such a promotion I would, of course, like to be your servant, and wait upon your excellency." Zhang was much pleased at this, and ordered a servant to bring some fruit and wine. When it arrived he poured out the wine himself, and offered it to Wu Song. Wu Song drank much wine. He also arranged for him a room quite close to his own quarter. The following day he sent a messenger to Shi-en to get Wu Song's things as the latter was going to stay at the colonel's residence. After that Zhang often had Wu Song in his private apartments at meals, and treated him as a member of his family. A tailor was ordered to make suits of clothes for him for the autumn season. Wu Song was much pleased at these indications of goodwill, and knew that it was very unusual for such a high official to treat men in this way. "Since I came here I have not been a few steps away from His Excellency, so that I have had no opportunity of going to the Kuaiwa forest to visit Shi-en. But he has several times sent men to see me, but they have never been allowed to come inside here." In the Yamen Colonel Zhang and Wu Song became more and more intimate as time went on. Whatever Wu Song spoke in favor of any man who had confided in him with any important affair Colonel Zhang would agree to. Therefore people gave Wu Song much silver, money, silk, etc., which he stored away in a rattan basket. Time passed quickly, and it was soon the middle of autumn. Colonel Zhang prepared a feast in his inner apartments to celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival, and invited Wu Song to join him. When Wu Song arrived he saw the wife and family of Zhang were there, so after drinking 1 cup of wine he prepared to depart, but Zhang asked where he was going. Wu Song replied, "As your wife and family are here I must act in a polite way and not stay." Zhang laughed, but was pleased to hear this. He said, "You make a mistake. I respect you as a hero. I particularly asked you to come and dine with me, so what difference does it make that my wife and family are also here? Please sit down." "But I am a criminal," replied Wu Song. "So how dare I sit down in your company?" "Hero," said Chang, "why should you not associate with us? There are no strangers here, so why not sit down?" Wu Song still wanted to go, but Zhang repeatedly pressed him to stay. At last he agreed to stop, and sat down on the edge of the chair in accordance with etiquette. A maidservant filled their cups with wine, and their conversation was about military skill. At last Zhang asked him why he drank so little wine, and he told the girl attendant to bring large silver cups for the wine. He then gave Wusong plenty of wine, and one cup quickly followed another. The bright moonlight was streaming through the eastern window. Wusong was now drinking to excess, and being half drunk threw decorum to the wind, and forgot his manners. Zhang sent for a young maidservant named Yulan, whom Zhang liked very much because of her singing. When she arrived he said to her, "There is nobody here except my personal bodyguard Wusong. You can sing to us that song about the mid-autumn moonlight." Yulan took her ivory castanets, and saluted. She then sang the poem by Su Dongpa. The Autumn Moon. I cannot sleep a bit tonight. The sky's so clear with moonlight. I roll up jeweled blinds and gaze on scenes so vast and lovely. The moon has light, and shadows black. Now full, but soon a crescent. But why not always full and round? And perfect, never changing? All men have pleasures, sorrows too. And friendship mixed with hatred. I hope for future manifest. With beauty, virtue constant. Bright moon sails Empyrean blue. And knows the ways of heaven. Its breast unstirred by feelings vile. A piece of jade quite flawless. I wish to mount the wind and fly to those far heights so dizzy, and climb the pure, cold towers of jade, and gaze on jeweled heavens. But all I should a shadow cast upon the scene below me. I am but human and of clay. Must leave those heights for Chang'e. Chang'e is the goddess in the moon. When Yulan had finished, she gave a woman's salute, put down her ivory castanets, and stood at one side. Colonel Zhang spoke to her, "Yulan, you can fill up our cups with wine." She took a tray with wine, and a maidservant accompanied her filling the cups. She first served the colonel, then his wife, and then Wusong. When Wusong was receiving his wine he bowed his head slightly as a sign of compliments. He saluted both Colonel Zhang and his wife, and then drank the wine at one draught, and returned the cup to the girl. Colonel Zhang pointed to Yulan, and said to Wusong, "This girl is very clever. She is skilled not only in music, but is very capable at needlework. If she finds favor in your eye we could select a lucky day, and marry her to you." Wusong saluted and replied, "I am hardly worthy of marrying a woman from your household. Would it not also injure my prospects of a livelihood here?" The colonel laughed, "As I have said I must give her to you, so do not decline my proposal." Wusong felt that he had taken too much wine, and was afraid that he might lose his manners. He got up, saluted everybody, and left. Upon entering his own room he felt that he could not sleep on account of the wine, so he took off his upper garments, and unwound his turban. Taking a cudgel he went out into the yard. There was bright moonlight, and he went through a few exercises. Noticing the position of the moon and stars he knew that it was about 1 a.m. So going indoors again he was just on the point of undressing, when he heard cries in the inner apartments that thieves had got in. Wusong thought that as the colonel had treated him so well it was his duty to go and rescue him from the thieves. So seizing his cudgel he hurried off to the inner apartments, and there met Yulan in an agitated state. She shouted out, "A thief has entered the garden." So he went into the flower garden, and searched for the thief without finding him. At last he gave up the search, and was carelessly returning, when in a shadow he fell over a stool that had been left there. Immediately about 8 soldiers rushed forward shouting, "Here's the thief." They seized him, and bound his hands behind his back with a rope. Wusong called out, "It is not I," but the soldiers were not going to listen to anything he said. Wusong saw that Colonel Zhang was seated in a room, where there was a bright light from a large candle. Zhang called out, "Bring the thief here." The soldiers beat Wusong at each step as they took him into the room where he called out, "I am Wusong. I am not a thief." Upon looking at him Zhang was very angry, and abused him, saying, "You banished thief. You previously had the eyes, eyebrows, heart, and liver of a thief. Yet I treated you well, asked you to dine with me, and had the intention of making you an official. So how is it that you have now done this vile thing? Sir, I came to try and arrest the thief, said Wusong, and they have arrested me by mistake. I am a most respectable person, so how could I commit a theft? You rascal need not offer any excuse, said Jiang. Take him to his room, and see if there are any stolen goods there. The soldiers took Wusong to his quarters, and opened his boxes. At the top was his clothing, but underneath were silver drinking cups and vessels, which were worth about 200 taels of silver. Upon seeing these, Wusong stared with astonishment, as they were not his things. The soldiers took all the valuables to Jiang, who said, "Banished thief. So impertinent you are. These things have been found in your boxes, so what excuse can you make? There is a saying, it is easier to get animals reincarnated, but the souls of men never change. Outwardly you have an honest man's appearance, but it is evident that you have the heart of a criminal." Turning to the soldiers he said, "Take the stolen things, and after sealing them up place them in the treasury for the night, and tomorrow we will cross-examine this villain." Wusong called out, "I am being wrongly accused." But the soldiers would not allow him to say anything more. They took Wusong away, and locked him up in a cell. Zhang sent a messenger that same night to report the affair to the prefect, and also offered bribes to all the lower officials. Early the next morning the prefect took his seat on the bench, and was surrounded by all the minor officials, yamen aides, and policemen. Wusong was brought into court under arrest, and the sealed packages of the stolen goods were also brought in. A confidential secretary of Colonel Zhang handed to the prefect a dispatch stating the details of the case against Wusong. The jailers placed before Wusong the instruments for punishment, but before Wusong could utter a single word, the prefect said, "This fellow was banished from a distant place, and how could he help becoming a thief? He has evidently seen valuables about, and so has harbored evil thoughts. Since the booty has been discovered in his possession, so that there is no need for us to listen to his stupid talk, and we will give him a severe beating." The jailer took the split bamboo, and dealt Wusong a perfect downpour of blows. Wusong knew that there was something underhand in all this, but as he saw no means of escape he confessed as follows, "On the 15th day of this month I saw many silver drinking cups in the yamen, and that was when I got the idea of stealing them." This forced confession was duly recorded, and handed to the prefect, who said, "This fellow was evidently led astray upon seeing so many valuables, but we won't go into that. Bring the Kang here, nail it on his neck, and take him to prison for execution." The jailer fastened on Wusong an oblong Kang, and took him off to the jail where prisoners await execution. Upon arriving there Wusong thought matters over. He could see no other explanation, but that Colonel Zhang had arranged this trick to get him into trouble. He thought, however, if he could survive this infliction, he would take the matter in hand, and look for revenge. In the prison both Wusong's legs and hands were locked with chains so that he could hardly move at all. Now Shi-En heard of this affair, and went to discuss it with his father. His father said, "Evidently this is the revenge of Jiang the door god, who must have heavily bribed Colonel Zhang, and then both of them have arranged this plot. They must have bribed everybody so that no one wants to hear his defense, but all hope to kill him. I think that he is not so guilty as deserving of death, so we had better send money and bribe the jailers. They may alleviate the punishments and allow him to live. Besides, we must find other ways to save him. There is a minor officer in the prison named Kong who is my intimate friend," said Shi-En, "so I have to go and talk to him." "You are under an obligation to Wusong, so if you do not go, who else would go?" said his father. So Shi-En took about 200 taels of silver, and went to Kang's house, but the jailer had not returned from the prison. Shi-En sent a servant to the prison, and in a short time Kong arrived. Shi-En told him all about Wusong. Kong replied, "The matter has really been arranged between Colonel Zhang and his friend Captain Zhang. Jiang the door god has been staying with Captain Zhang and requested him to bribe his friend Colonel Zhang for him to do this vile thing. Every official concerned has been bribed as well. In the prison every jailer has been paid to do this. The prefect is willing to take the responsibility for the killing of Wusong, but Chief Clerk Yi does not agree. Yi is a very honest and upright man, and would not punish innocent persons, so Wusong is in no danger at present. Now that I have heard your version of the case, I will see that Wusong is well treated in the prison. You had better, however, send someone to explain the case to Chief Clerk Yi, and ask him to arrange for Wusong's release. Shi-En gave Kong 100 taels of silver, and after some declination Kong accepted it. Shi-En then returned home, and found a man who was a personal friend of Chief Clerk Yi. He explained the matter, and gave him 100 taels of silver to approach Yi about the matter. Now Chief Clerk Yi already knew that Wusong was a hero, and he had already a mind to save him, although the prefect had personally given him instructions to deal with the prisoner harshly. Examining the accusations, he saw that even if Wusong had stolen goods, he was not deserving of death. Taking everything into consideration, he decided to exempt Wusong from the crime, especially as he had now received 100 taels of silver through a friend of the prisoner. The next day Shi-En took a large quantity of wine and food to the prison, and was allowed by Kong to give it personally to Wusong. Shi-En also gave the jailers about 30 taels of silver, and they loosened the chains binding Wusong. Shi-En told Wusong that he had spoken to Chief Clerk Yi about his case, and he would be treated much better, and that when the sentence had been served he would be released. At that time Wusong's bonds had not been so tight, so that he had even begun to think of escaping from the prison, but now that Shi-En had held out hope of other arrangements, he gave up that idea. Shi-En spoke many comforting words to Wusong before he left for home. 2 days later Shi-En took a further supply of wine, food, and money to the prison, and after seeing the jailer Kong he was allowed to interview Wusong again. Upon returning home he engaged a man again to visit the officials concerned, and urged them to settle the case of Wusong as soon as possible. After a few days more Shi-En again visited the prison and distributed more money, wine, and food to the jailers, and begged them still to treat Wusong with leniency. He also brought new clothes for Wusong to change. Altogether Shi-En visited the prison 3 times in this way. Now it happened that a confidential servant of Captain Zhang saw Shi-En visiting the prison, and reported the matter to his master. Captain Zhang conveyed this information to his friend Colonel Zhang, who passed it to the prefect with a present of money. The prefect was a corrupt official, and received the bribe. He deputed a man to visit the prison, and keep a watch there as to what was happening. Whenever the spy saw an outsider there he would arrest him. But Shi-En got to know of this, so he kept away for some time. The jailers continued to treat Wusong well. Shi-En now had to visit the home of Kong, the prison official, where he got all the necessary news. Chief Clerk Yi, who had the case in hand, had already made up his mind as to what should be done, and reported to the prefect all the underhand management of the 2 Zhangs. The prefect himself was now well aware that Colonel Zhang and his friend Captain Zhang had received plenty of money from Jiang the door god, and that was why they both were trying to injure Wusong. The prefect thought, those fellows have got the money, and expect me to do the dirty work. Accordingly he was determined not to press the case any further. At the end of the 2nd month Wusong was taken before the prefect, who ordered the Kang be removed. Chief Clerk Yi read out the confessions of Wusong's guilt, and the prefect gave judgment that he be given 20 blows with the bamboo, and be sent to the prison at Anzhou. The stolen goods were to be restored to the owner, and they were duly delivered to the messenger from Colonel Zhang. The blows were duly inflicted on Wusong, then his face was branded with characters, and a kang weighing about 10 pounds was fastened round his neck. A dispatch was written and handed to 2 strong men who had been selected to convey Wusong to Anzhou. Now Shi-En's father had bribed the men not to give heavy blows. Both the prefect and Chief Clerk Yi knew that Wusong was wronged, and so condoned the punishment. Wusong suppressed his anger. After the punishment the escort set off with Wusong walking in front. They had not gone a quarter of a li when they passed an inn at the side of the road where Shi-En came out and spoke to Wusong. I have been waiting here for some time in order to see you before you go. Wusong saw that Shi-En had a bandage round his head, and his hand was suspended from his neck. So he asked, I have not seen you for a long time, but how is it that you dress like this? After I visited you in the prison the third time, the prefect got to know it, and sent a spy to keep watch in the prison, and Colonel Zhang also had another spy outside the prison to watch my movements. Therefore it was not advisable for me to visit you again in the prison. So I only went to the jailer Kang's house to get news. About a month ago, Jiang the door god, accompanied by a number of men, came to the inn at the Kuaihua forest and assaulted me. They also insisted upon me paying obeisance to Jiang the door god, in the presence of mediators. He then took the inn and the furniture from me again. Today I heard that you are to be banished to Anzhou, so I bring 2 suits of cotton clothes here so that I can give them to you personally. I have also prepared 2 roasted geese, which I hope you will partake of before starting on your long journey. He also invited the escort to enter the inn and dine with them. But the 2 men declined because Wu Song was a thief, and if the officials got to know of this affair they would be complicated. They continued that if Shen did not want a beating he must get away at once. Shen did not like this talk, so he offered the escort 10 taels of silver. They angrily declined the money and pressed Wu Song to start. Shen bought 2 cups of wine and offered them to Wu Song. He also strapped the bundle of clothing round his waist and fastened the 2 roasted geese to his kang. He then whispered to Wu Song, "Inside the bundle are some bits of silver which you can use for your expenses on the journey. There are also 2 pairs of hempen shoes for you. On the way you must beware of these 2 ruffians." "You need not say anything more," said Wu Song. "I understand. Even if there were 4 such men I should not be afraid. You go back now, and don't worry about me. I already have a plan." Shen wept as he departed. Wu Song and his escort resumed their journey, but they had gone only a few li when the 2 soldiers conversed in an undertone, "Those 2 men have not arrived yet." But Wu Song heard this remark and laughed to himself and thought, "Those 2 fellows evidently will be unfortunate if they come and fight with me." One of Wu Song's hands was fastened to the kang, but the other hand was free. With the free hand he took the roasted geese off the kang and ate them as he walked. He had eaten both of them before they had gone a couple of li more. They were barely 3 li from the town when he saw 2 men at the side of the road. They both had halberds in their hands and swords in their belts. As the escort came up they fell in behind without saying a word. But as they went along Wu Song noticed that they were winking to each other, and he almost got their meaning. They had hardly traveled another li before they came to a rapid flowing river with a large pool. There was a broad wooden bridge across the river with an gate arch at one end on which were 3 characters, Feiyun Pool. Pretending not to see this he asked his escort, "What is this place called?" The 2 men replied, "As you are not blind you ought to be able to see the characters on the gate arch that this is the Feiyun Pool." Wu Song stopped on the bridge and said, "I need to pee here." The 2 armed with halberds had barely come 1 step nearer, when Wu Song cried out, "Down you go," and with 1 kick he knocked one into the water. The other turned to escape, but Wu Song kicked him in the back, and he turned a somersault into the water as well. The 2 other men escorting him were excited at this, and turned to get off the bridge, but Wu Song shouted out, "Where are you going?" At the same time he wrenched the kang into 2 parts, and pursued the men. On leaving the bridge 1 man fell, but Wu Song ignored him, and catching up to the other one hit him with his fist, and knocked him down. One of the halberds had not fallen in the water, so Wu Song got this, and killed both men. Both of the men whom he had kicked into the river had by now swum to the bank, but Wu Song overtook them, and killed one of them at once. He seized hold of the other, and said, "If you tell me the truth I will not kill you." The man said, "We are both followers of Jiang the door god. He and Colonel Zhang sent us to accompany your escort, and to kill you at the first opportunity." "Where is Jiang the door god, just now?" "When we started off he was with Captain Zhang at Colonel Zhang's house, drinking wine in the Yuanyang Tower, and they told us to go there, and report the result of the plot." "Under these circumstances I cannot forgive you," said Wu Song, and taking the halberd he killed that man also. He selected the best of the weapons, and threw the men's bodies into the river. He stayed on the bridge for some time looking round, and thought, "I have killed these 4 men, But I shall not be satisfied until I have also killed Colonel Zhang, Jiang the door god, and Captain Zhang. He at last started off to return to Mengzhou. Red lamp shines in drawing room. Sudden death has stained the floor. We will now relate what occurred when Wu Song reached Mengzhou.